and welcome to a slightly different episode of Beyond the Bio. Like many of you, we're in the middle of a busy summer, so this week we've pulled together some of my favourite conversations on one topic that comes up time and time again: speaking. Whether you're getting ready for conference season, thinking about putting yourself forward for panels, or just wondering how speaking could help grow your profile, there's so much value in learning from people who do it brilliantly. In this episode, you'll hear some of the best insights from experts like Sophie-Jane Lee, Alfie Joey, Kamal Ellis-Hyman, and Sandra Garlick. I hope you enjoy this special compilation, and I'll be back with a brand new interview next week. So let's get stuck in. When founders are giving their backstory, their origin story, how can they frame that so it doesn't just sound like a CV?
It depends. It really depends on the situation. So if you're doing a talk on a stage, it actually works a lot better to give an overview of who you are and why you deserve to be there in whatever way you choose to do that. But then ultimately, no one really cares. Like with love, they don't care. Like they want to know who you are. They want to know why they should listen to you. But that's about it. They don't care about your whole life story unless you make it super, super relevant to them. So on a stage, the best way to do that is to take people on the journey of what it is that you're trying to tell them and weave your experiences in. So I will, if I'm doing a talk about storytelling, I'll bring examples that contextualize the process from my own career and experience. Case studies, but done more like a story rather than like a case study. But only if it follows an arc. So that's the key thing to think about. Like, what is the story here beyond myself? What's the outcome that I want the audience to find themselves at? So literally thinking about it like a journey. The hero's journey is a good sort of thought of that. And the way with that is that your audience is like Frodo and you are like Gandalf. So your job is to guide them on that journey, help them navigate the challenges that come along that journey. Your job is not to be the Frodo. It's not to be the main character, even when you're telling your story. So, for example, like very rarely would I ever tell like, and then I started here and I started here and I started here. But what I might do is pull a micro moment from my founder journey, founder story, and tell the story of what it was like to go through a business divorce and really interrogate that emotional experience to give a payoff to the audience that they can learn something from. So it's much more effective, really, unless you're using your website and you're telling the full story of why your business exists, like on your about page or something. It's much more effective to choose micro moments from within the story to land people in a specific moment in space and time, which gives them a lot more context for where you are and gives them that payoff rather than trying to paint an entire picture of all of the reasons why you started your business. And again, making sure that it's hyper relevant to who you're talking to and asking yourself, do they actually care about this? Like, what is this giving to them more than me just blowing smoke up my own arse?
That makes total sense. I guess following on from that, what role would you say vulnerability plays in storytelling?
It plays a big role, and we need to use it with caution. I see a lot of actually like sharing from the wound is an expression that I've heard a lot recently, and that can be quite messy. It sounds messy, and it is messy, and it also doesn't position you as an authority. And I think while it's really important to be relatable and to share moments of relatability, it's also really important that your audience sees you as remarkable and that you are somebody that they trust, that how you hold your emotional space is done in a way that has integrity, not integrity in that you do what you say you're going to do, integrity in that it's held in a container, a safe container, because oversharing, and I think there is a difference between vulnerability and oversharing,
Fine line,
is actually quite an unsafe emotional environment for yourself and for the listener. it's quite an inappropriate way to share information with somebody, because you're literally just dumping it onto them. And it might work in the sense that you get lots of engagement on social media, and you might get lots of, oh, bless you, oh, like kind of loving comments, which is great, but that doesn't translate to growing your business. And if we're using storytelling in the context of growing our business, growing our authority, we need to be hyper discerning about the type of message that we're putting out and what we want ultimately the overarching picture, the overarching narrative of ourselves and our business to be like for people.
I talk about speaking like having a stick of rock. You go to Blackpool, you get your stick of rock, and wherever you bite it, it says Blackpool inside. And that's how you need to think of your speaking. At any point throughout your talk or keynote or whatever you're doing, it needs to have that message, that core message running right through the center of it. So that at any point in time, if anyone's in any doubt about what your message is and what they're supposed to do with it, it runs like a fine line all the way through. And I think a lot of speakers forget that, and they go off on a tangent, or I've sat in audiences before and I thought, that was a lovely talk, but what was she trying to say? You want your audience to actually say, wow, and you want them to take action and take it away. And I always say when I'm speaking, if one person in the audience is inspired to take action, job done.
And what's the best way to anchor it to that one thing? Is it to kind of keep bringing everything back to that and peppering in the stories? Or
the way I teach my clients is to find their stories first and then grab their message and say, right, this is the message I want to deliver today, because the message will be different for every audience. And that's the other thing I see speakers do. They roll out the same talk everywhere they go, and they don't consider the audience. You don't speak for yourself, you speak for the audience. And so you tailor that talk, and then you bring in the stories to demonstrate a fact. You never, ever bring a story in just a random story, because it has to demonstrate a point. It has to have meaning to the audience, and you bring it back to that message.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And you say that speaking isn't about being perfect, it's about being purposeful. What does purposeful look like in practice?
Again, it's not trying to look too polished. It doesn't matter if you forget your words on stage. People then connect to the human part of you. And I've never, ever sat in an audience thinking, I want that speaker to fail, or I don't want her to get her words out. And nobody knows what you're going to say till it comes out of your mouth anyway. So I think people beat themselves up and try and be too perfect when they forget the purpose of being in the room. And that is the number one thing. Why are you there? And who are you trying to reach in the audience? And that, I think if you keep those two things in mind, you really will have impact on your audience.
And when you talk about having impact and connecting with the audience, do you think you need a different approach depending on the size of the audience? So I'm thinking about, just before we started recording today, I was talking to you about I'm doing a keynote at a conference this weekend, and there's 500 people in that audience. Do I need to connect with them or take a different approach to connecting with them versus if I was doing a talk for 30 or 50 people?
If I'm talking to a really small audience, obviously you can make a better connection. I very regularly jump off stage and go into my audience. If I've got a lovely small audience, I'll connect with them and I'll, ask them for questions, and I'll jump into the audience with my mic. I love doing that. Whereas when you've got 500 or 1,000 or something like that, it's more like a performance. And then you've got to make it so interactive, because the lifespan of their attention is about 5 to 7 minutes. So they're going to switch off. They're going to start scrolling. They're going to get bored. If they're sat at the back, how are you going to make that connection? So you've got to pepper it with stuff that actually brings them back to you. And there's all sorts of tools and techniques you can do that, but it is a very different approach, because you've got a much larger number and you can't get that. You might connect with the people on the front row, but you need to be, the people sitting right at the back need to feel as if you're talking directly to them.
I think speaking seems to be the in thing at the moment. Like, everyone wants to be a speaker. They all want to get paid thousands of pounds to speak and, be on the biggest stages. And, people need to build up to that. You can't do that straight away. What are the biggest mistakes that you see in early stage speakers when they're trying to look credible and they're trying to aim for those bigger gigs?
I think everybody, I talk a lot about fees versus frees. So, don't underestimate speaking for free. And I will speak for free on occasions. And what I do is I approach it in a different way, because I look at it, I might go and speak for free somewhere and walk out with thousands of pounds worth of business, because I've connected with somebody, they come on board as a client, and there's a spend to that. So never underestimate who is in the room, and never underestimate who the person in the room is connected to, because likewise you can dismiss an audience by thinking they're not your target audience, but you don't know who they know. But yeah, it's lovely to be paid, but it brings a whole different set of circumstances. So when you're paid, you can rarely sell from stage. You can't do anything like that at all. When you're speaking for free, you can say to the organizer, can I promote my book? Can I promote a QR code? Can I have some video? Can I have some photographs of the event? Can I have certain things? And you can build it in to make it worthwhile for you. When you're paid to speak, and when you're paid a lot of money to speak, you are there, turn up, speak, that's it. You're more of a performance on the day. So there are different rules and things, and I've done a lot of both. And I must admit, I do like the freedom of speaking for free, because then you've got more control over it.
When I was quite young, I trained to be a priest many years ago. We did a Myers-Briggs personality test. And I was high extrovert when I was young, annoyingly extrovert. And then we did an intensive Myers-Briggs personality test. And I thought, I'm not going to be like that anymore. I'm going to be more aware. I'm going to work from my shadow side. I'm going to be, I'll still be all right talking and presenting and communicating, but I'm going to listen a lot more. And it took a while. And then, interestingly, we did another Myers-Briggs test just before me and Charlie Charlton started as a double act on the radio, to see what the power dynamic was, who was higher status, who was lower status. And it was interesting. I was an introvert. And I think I've spoke to Herb Kim, who runs all the TED Talks about this, and he said the best speakers are usually introverts, nearly always introverts, because the high extroverts are so, they just crash in and they say, right, here it is, here's my talk, and it sounds good in the pitch, but it doesn't evolve, and it just goes out like that, and they don't think they have to do any more. Whereas the introverts care more and are more aware and really develop the talk, so it builds and builds with practice and rehearsal to the event itself, and then it's ready. And one of the best talks I heard, it was at Thinking Digital, and she was called Nadia Finer. And I was in the room as people were setting up, and she was rehearsing. She had a very quiet, shy voice. And her talk is called Shy and Mighty. And she's written books about shyness being a diversity issue. And it was, for me, it was the most powerful talk of the day. It wasn't somebody who was loud and brash and all bells and whistles.
That's so interesting. When I think about TEDx talks that have resonated with me and stuck with me, I can think of an example of a talk, and the last time I looked, she had over 9 million views on it, and she's an introvert, and she's someone that I see speak on video and stuff, but in real life is actually finds everything a bit overwhelming, but really brings it in that. And I kind of think that does work really well for all the reasons you've said, but I think the bit that I then struggle with is they're not the person you see on the screen in real life. So how does that match up? Well, that's the downside of it, potentially.
I think so, and I think sometimes people are probably disappointed in me that I'm not, and this comes with being a comedian as well. When you're a comedian, you have to make people laugh
all the time.
Yeah, and they think, well, you're not like that off stage. And so very often now, if I'm doing a dinner, or I'm hosting an event where there's a big dinner, I now tend to say, don't put me on the table. Because the hardest part of the night is the 2 hours sat with people who are very well-meaning, but they want to chat to you, and they want you to be at that same energy as the guy who's just introduced the night, and you've sat down with them, and they go, all right, you're going to entertain us now for 2 hours. And my mind's on the script,
100%.
on the auction prizes, on the charity details. So now I usually say, I'll eat with the tech guys, I'll have chips backstage, and I'll just go through the
Stay in
script.
the
I'm
zone.
working for you.
You have spoken to over 125,000 students, which is an incredible reach. How do you balance being inspirational to young people with being credible to those corporate clients you have, like HSBC?
Yeah, that was something.
Different audience.
Completely different audience. And it was something that I struggled with at first. And I realized it's mostly in my own head. We have pictures of people doing well in certain industries, and we think, right, you've got to be as polished as them, as a professional as them. And then you forget that the reason people bring you in is because you're not them. Mm-hmm. They're available. Mm-hmm. They're bringing you in because you bring something fresh. So we actually just started a few gigs and went, let's just do our thing. Went in, delivered, got amazing feedback that said, do you know what, you really brought a fresh energy to what we do. You brought a fresh approach. These young people were really uptight, and then you came in and they just took a deep breath, and we got to see who they really are, and we love how you bring that out of them. And realised, actually, the things you need to entertain a room of 200 year 10s who don't want to be in the room, who have just had a telling off of how well they've got to be behaved this assembly, but then making that engaging, upbeat, those skills transfer into the corporate world where people come in really wanting to do well, and I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to come across like I don't know. I know I did a great interview, but I'm going to just sit back and be a little bit quiet to be safe. It really brings them out of their shells as well and go, do you know what, maybe I can be myself, even though I'm in Canary Wharf in a head office surrounded by suits and ties and a metal detector as I walked in.
I've been in that office.
Yeah.
It's wild. It's like more security than an airport.
Yeah, honestly. So you just automatically get a bit upset as you walk in. So they place us there, we let them breathe, and then take our unique approach. We deal with personal development. Companies are amazing at getting their commercial awareness up, amazing at training them on how to be great. We come in and do personal development because there's an assumption that personal development happens automatically, and it just doesn't.
So you mentioned earlier about opening Atomicon, which is a huge platform, and we've had Andrew and Pete on Beyond the Bio before, and they are absolute legends. How did you prepare for opening Atomicon, and what impact has it had afterwards?
So preparation for Atomicon is like preparation for nothing else because it's such a unique event. So for me, it was just about how do I create a piece, an opening that's relatable to an entrepreneur whilst also being really entertaining in that sort of Atomicon signature style. So it was completely understanding the brand, what are they about, how they come across.
How would you describe their brand?
Man.
Certainly unique.
Punchy,
Pineapple.
over the top, a little bit of cheese, definitely a little bit of cheese in there, but mostly it's just genuine. So when I did the pieces, the references I was making in it were all about the genuine struggles we have as entrepreneurs. What's it like sending out an email and hearing nothing back? There's a bit where I say, I sent a message out to the world. I stand on stage like that and got nothing back. And you hear people like go, yeah, or people laughed at, I sent out this LinkedIn post and I got no DMs. So it's just, let's make it raw, let's make it honest, whilst also being entertaining. And that's why it hit really well.
Thank you for listening. If you're serious about growing your profile, take our free profile assessment quiz to see where you're at right now and get hints and tips on how to improve your score. You'll find the link to the quiz in the show notes. If you've enjoyed the episode, it would be mint if you'd subscribe, like, and leave a review. See you next Monday.